Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. In the previous episode, we were doing some part of Trial 2, but today's episode right now, we're gonna cross-examine the next eyewitness testimony. Behind today's episode, make sure that like with spoil script page channel. And identical to that of the witness beside him. No, what's going on here? I've always heard this. It's a birthmark, isn't it? A birthmark, you say? I assume the reason you've been recalled to the stand has been explained to you? Hey, somewhat about an inspector again? I'm telling you, you got it all wrong as usual. You're denying all knowledge of it? Well, of course I am. Are you trying to kill me with all this nonsense, eh? Well, at least you'll have more stories to peddle back on Fresno Street, won't you? Now, we're going to need you to testify again. And you, Mr. De Russo and Mr. De Rossi, I'm sure you'll cooperate, won't you? Do we have any choice?
We are in a big trouble, eh, Capo?
That's quite a knife dilatory chatter. Proceed with the testimony. The inspector and the identification revisited. The man who claimed to be inspector that day was definitely not this man.
Is right. See, you think we will forget those grand lips, huh?
I never leave Fresno Street. Alright? I have no interest in any red-headed league. I'm all in the world. Me, I have no kid fuck or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? Just look at me, eh? Does it look like I could carry off a disguise with a face like this? It certainly appears that we have the wrong man. What I've been telling you, huh? There was no need for this pointless testimony. That's right, I'm just a simple peddler. Remember, Fresno Street's all I know. How would I have come by a police inspector's identification book, eh? Well, yes, that's hard to explain. But a brief cross-examination, I think, counsel. Very brief. Isn't there anyone in this courtroom who thinks I might be onto something?
I stand fastly by your side as always, Mr. Naruhodo.
The inspector and the identification revisited. The man who claimed to be an inspector that day was definitely not this man. So you say, but how can you be quite so certain? There's no need to hurt your hands under the desk, monsieur. Surely the reason is obvious, no? Because I have never before seen lips like this. Nevertheless, there's a clear red mark around Mr. Gossip's neck. And it looks like very much like the left behind the neck of your colleague by your prize collar. Mon Dieu, with your words, is it like you tried to wring my neck?
It does look very much like my neck though, eh?
No, this is a birthmark, lad. The biggest lips in London, the neck to die for. A day broke the mold, and one day made me. For the first time in my life, I feel lucky to have been born with red hair.
And I thought being Japanese made you stand out in London.
So you maintain that you never seen that man before? Oui, c'est ça. I swear to the flames on my hair. So fierce pride has outgrown the frustration with your hair now, is it? Is right, see, you think we would forget these grand lips, huh? Well, yes, I don't imagine I'll forget those lips in a hurry either.
That is what I'm saying. For some reason, it makes me want to eat. How did Fabian call it? And Claire? You know, I've never seen the hair as black as yours before either.
Likewise, I've never seen red hair like yours until I came to Britain.
See, maybe it's a national trait, eh? Maybe all the people from this a man's country have a grand lips.
No, lad, I was born right here in Fresno Street and I never left.
Oofa, that is all the problem. See?
So you definitely didn't go to the park on live stream that day, Mr. Gossip? No, how many times do I have to say it, eh? Never leave Fresno Street, alright? I have no interest in any redhead league. So, you heard of the Redheaded League, had you? You don't get the name like gossip or nothing, eh? It's business to know what's going off in town. I sold that tasty tidbit to a Fairview redhead that came past me. Just between us, I even got a sandwich cut off for it.
Well, he does have a very red nose, if that counts.
Who knows? But as you can see, my own hair's not a hint of red in it. In any case, Brussels Street's my patch. You won't catch me sliding off on the other part of town. No, sir.
Excuse me.
Mr. De Rassol.
Oui, can I help you?
Did Mr. Gossip words now just led you to remember something relevant, perhaps?
It was the other day when I was looking for a place near the park, a small house or something.
To the headquarters of your Redheaded League, yes?
I visited a housing agent on live stream and there I saw him. This man was paying money to the agent.
What? Mr. Gossip with a housing agent?
Oui, he had some kind of contract in his hand and they were clearly discussing terms.
But no, you're mistaken, Tom. I never left Fresno Street. Me, like I said before, you mistake me for someone else. Someone with the same face.
No, the couple was right. I remember too. He was paying the man with the banknotes.
With notes. Like I said, that wasn't me.
I was curious why this man, the dirty clothes, and said so much of money. So I looked at the name of the papers.
And what name was written? Mr. Gossip?
No, this is a man. He lies. He tells you that he has no name. But in fact, his name is Hugh Bone, huh? Is better than Mr. Gossip, I think, see?
Oh! We found the guy. I'm a peddler of tidbits of information, like I said, at Fresno Street, and that's that. I don't much like folk talking about my personal life. Indeed. It is not the intention of the court to invade the privacy of witnesses. Very well, I shall respect your wishes, sir. The aforementioned name shall be redacted from all court records of this trial, assuming no objections. I'm sorry, my lord, but the defense does object. Because the name just mentioned has a very deep significance to this case. Good gracious. Do you simply object, Prosecutor Asogi? As it happens, my lord, that particular name has already been mentioned during today's proceedings. Well, I never. In what capacity?
Huge Boone. Hugh Boone. The name of the leaseholder of the room.
Let me put this very simply. The victim's body was discovered in your rented room. I suggest, sir, that you start talking. Well, alright. I suppose that might be the case, eh? So your real name is Hugh Boone. Boone. Boone? Hugh Boone? Well, just between us, I don't like to blow me own trumpet, but there's no buying nor peddler of tidbits in town. So I happen to be able to afford a grubby little room in the falling down back street townhouse. You do? And once every 6 months, I go and pay the rent to the agent on Line Street. Hey, I remember now. There were 2 vulgar redheads in there last time.
Aye, if either of us is vulgar, it's not me.
Think again, Peppino.
Why didn't you bring this up before? It's like I told you already. I don't like talking about my personal life. I'm a tidbit peddler as far as anyone is concerned. No fuss. You will update your testimony to include this most surprising revelation, Mr. Boone. If it must. So the leaseholder Scotland Yard has been looking for this body was discovered. Has been under our noses all along. I rent the room where the fellow was found. It's true for what the grits make. What kind of evidence do we have again? What do we have? There has to be something that we can do. Do we have any evidence? I have no idea what I'm doing. Something that says that we have to look into this. We found out who his name was. So what can we testify about this? It's his place.
Hold it!
So, you live in that room presumably, do you? No, I don't live there. What do you think? There's no bed, is there? There's a desk. Then, why would you want to rent it? Well, I don't think I should have to say, really. Then how about the notice board in there? Which was covered from the top to bottom in confidential documents only the police should have access to. Nope, that board's not mine. The inspector must have brought it along. It's only the other bits and bobs that belong to me, the desk, the chair, and that. People don't generally carry enormous notice boards around them. The real question is, why was Inspector Gregson killed there in your room? Well, obviously, I have not the faintest idea. Wait a minute. I mean, it's causing me no end of bother, to be honest.
It seems to me that Mr. Mr. Bonet would rather as little as known about his room as possible for some reason.
Yes, it does. Someone comes us right, and more importantly, knowing that the scene of the crime is actually his room completely changes things. In particular, there's one part of his testimony that's really bothering me now. That's how I'm finally going to undo this man. You don't think... Is that the same guy? Is it? It looks like him. It looks like him. Let's see. Just look at me. Does it look like I could carry off a disguise with a face like this?
Objection!
There it is. If you have no kinfolk, as you put it, then explain why is it that among the sparse furnishings we found this photograph in the room. I presume as you've been renting the room, that this photograph belongs to you, does it not? Well... Mr. Boone, drop the pretense, and tell the car exactly who you really are. I don't know what you mean. I'm a peddler, I keep telling you so. You really don't need to bother with me. Please, just leave it alone. As the man says, leave it alone. Whatever the truth is about this man's life has no bearing on this case. Because it's simply not possible that he's impersonating Inspector Gregson. How can you be so sure? Just look at this man. No amount of disguise could ever hide the unmissable features. But what if we were to look at the other way around? What do you mean? Yes, Counsel, what do you mean? Well, there's no denying that Mr. Bonet's lip is very prominent indeed. But consider the possibility that his prominent lip is itself part of the elaborate disguise. Then hiding the prominent feature, in other words, revealing his true face, would make an utterly impenetrable disguise. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Hugh Bonet? Good. Witness, are you still hiding the truth from this court?
If that's a disguise, then underneath it, his true identity must be.
Yes, that's right. There's really only one person he could really be. My lord, the defense believes it can be revealed Mr. Bonet's true identity to the court. No, please, no. Very well then, counsel. What is the true identity of this peddler who goes simply by the name Gossip Street? Where the heck is a... There you go.
Take that!
Your real name is actually Mr. Vigil, isn't it? Mr. Daily Vigil. I don't recall that name, Counsel. Who is this Mr. Vigil? It's a name I encountered yesterday, my lord. It has to do with a certain client of Mr. Herlock Sholmes. A young gentlewoman came to the detective asking him to locate her missing husband. The woman is photographed. In fact, this is Mrs. Vigil. What? From what I understand, you haven't returned home since the night before the inspector was found dead. But of course, that night, you were being held captive by the two Redhead League men. And last night, you were put up by the prosecution service in preparation for testifying in this trial. Because we've been led to you, Miss Venus and Mr. Sandwich were all homeless. Being important witnesses in this case, we needed to know where we could find you, of course. And that explains why you're not only been unable to return home, but also unable to contact your wife, who's been beside herself with worry, waiting for you at the Vigil residence. No, just hold on a moment. I don't have the first idea what I'm talking about. Really? It's a simple enough matter to confirm my suspicions. All we have to do is pull off that disguise. Bailiff, bring soap, a sponge, and a washball at once. Mr. Mr. Rosa, you will restrain the witness.
Oui, my lord. Si, my lord.
Oh, man. You mean this case is actually going to be over soon? I thought there would be more. We actually gotta end the case real soon. Well, we are now seeing your true features, I presume. We're gonna get his testimony again? Lift your head, sir, so the court can see your face. It would appear that the defense counsel's assertion was entirely correct. This has all been a very elaborate deception. So witnesses, tell the court, have you seen this man before?
I don't believe it, but...
See, there is no question. This is the inspector we saw in the park.
Extraordinary. Still gotta get another testimony in a bit. On the day of the Red-Headed League enrollment, the man claiming to be Inspector Grayson who appeared before Mr. De Rossi and De Rossal in the park was you, disguised as the inspector, or rather, was you posing as the inspector in no disguise at all. Mr. Vigil was formerly employed as the chief warder at the Barclay prison. The chief warder? Then your career had promise. Why would you quite possibly have become future governor of the prison? What on earth have you been doing peddling tittle-tattle on the Fresno Street? Well, it's been 10 years since Mr. Vigil worked at the prison. 10 years? I'm really dreadfully sorry about all this. Yes, it's true. I am Daily Vigil. And you were the chief warder of the Barclay prison 10 years ago? So where did Mr. Hugh Boone came from? Boone is the other me. It's a name I invented. Well, evidently there's a great deal under the surface here. I'll explain everything. I'll tell you just how wretched my life has become. His testimony now? As you say, it was 10 years ago now that my employment at Barclay Chief Warder came to an end. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times were hard in London, and I found no suitable engagement at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street. But your wife appears to know nothing of this? She still maintains that you are the chief warder at the Barclay prison.
I was utterly determined that my wife should not know of my failings, which is why I never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Bonet, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street, the scene of the very crime I'm investigating. Yes, that's right. A place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 as a squaddler peddler, and transform myself back every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about time before returning home. That quickly became my daily routine. I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room, but that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us in the first place? I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons, and without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them. So instead, you decided to conceal your occupation from them. Yes. I've made such a terrible mess of everything. Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to passing gentlemen, even at 6p apiece, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as chief warder at the prison. Very true. To have kept your family in comfort despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment. That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson. What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth? It was some years after I invented Bonet and begun my other life as a street seller. He, the inspector that is, recognized me one day. Do you mean to say the victim was an acquaintance of yours? I knew him from the time working at the prison. When he saw what I become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. And from that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then one day, he asked me if I could carry out a secret assignment for him. A secret? What was that? I was to impersonate the inspector. What? Impersonate him? We always met in the little room so the inspector could brief me. Visit Oski's tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress. Orksky. There was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people. On those occasions, he would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that I, Inspector Gregson, had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially. A Scotland Yard inspector willing to relinquish his identification to your care with intent to deceive? That, as I'm sure I need to point out, is a very serious criminal offense. But why? What was the point of you impersonating him? I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me of numerous occasions. Now remember, Vigil, I need your solemn word. You don't blab about this to anyone, alright? Ever. Even if, well, if I end up a croaker. In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of second office for him. So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on livestream was really? Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my Bonet disguise, and then went as instructed to the park, armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away. But how did he die, is the question. But how did he die, is the question. Well, It would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case. Explain yourself, Professor Asogi. My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location the day before his corpse was discovered, at the hands of these two red-headed league men when they imprisoned the inspector. But no, that can't be. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day, it was me.
Oh goodness.
Finally, we have clarity. We had nothing to do with the murder of the inspector. And merci, Monsieur de la Défense, for proving it.
What?
Order! Indeed, it would appear that we have reached a de facto conclusion of sorts. These witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim, as proven somewhat ironically by the defense. I hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
But who killed who is the question.
Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I would like to pose one further question to the witness.
Kazuma?
What question, counsel? It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time.
10 years ago? The execution of the professor, Genshin Osogi.
I want to know exactly what your involvement was.
Oh,
Answer me, man. One moment, counsel. Is this related to the current case? Naturally. It is the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are intricate blah 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 link. Does the defense concur, counsel?
Kazuma, you're not yourself. You're not as calm and collected as usual. Poor Kazuma. No wonder he's acting this way. Mr. Vigil's memories of what happened 10 years ago would tell the tale of Genshin Osogi's last moments. His own father. I know, I do understand that, but even so.
Prosecutor Asogi, do you generally believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death?
I need you to trust me. Please.
Very well. Then the defense has no objection.
I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness. The truth is, I remember very little of that time. You've forgotten? I'm sorry to say, yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But for some peculiar reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy.
Does that not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry?
Well, 10 years ago is a long time. But to have forgotten the reason why you left such an important job.
Yes, you're right. And not only that, Mr. Vigil's claims contradicts what we already know. The human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily. Which is why we have tendency to wrap it up for protection. Sorry? The human spirit? I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean. When we experience pain and suffering that we feel unable to bear, we block it out, obliterate from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface. And when they do, the fragile spirit may finally be crushed. But I really don't.
Kazuma.
But if it must be crushed, then it's so be it. Because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out one way or another.
Right. Now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth at any cost. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. I have no idea how this is going to go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to look at this. Evidence that clearly contradicts your version of events. It was this, right?
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. Well, yes. In other words, you claim to have left the post of chief warder of your own volition. Well, yes, of course. Why? Tell me. Do you remember seeing this document before? No, I don't. This is a dismissal notice ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. A dismissal notice? And the name on the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil. What? What? It's mine! So you didn't resign from the prison service at all. For some reason, you were dismissed as chief warder from Barclay. No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation and the dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it? If you were forcibly dismissed, there must have been a good reason. Clearly, you did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. According to the few remaining records, the final execution that you supervised was on 17 June 10 years ago. And on that day, something very serious took place at the Barclay prison. The 17th of June? Was that the professor's execution? He was drugged! As you were the chief ward at the time, it stands to reason that you would have been present throughout the proceedings. It does sound familiar. And yet, that execution never took place. The convict ostensibly executed earlier that day later emerged from the grave. The convict came back to life. In the cemetery in the middle of the night, there was a witness. However, the witness claims that a moment after he saw the convict clambering out of the grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments. Yes. Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at that time, you must know the truth about what really happened. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, I know there are memories in your head that can explain what happened on the 17th June 10 years ago. And now it's time for you to drag them up. Mr. Vigil? Yes, the whole prison. It was a complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane. What?
Order! Do you mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of the time have returned?
It's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, the screams. Oh my goodness. The papers. There were reports. Articles about a man who's seen a ghost. Yes, in Oak Streber.
But surely those reports were exaggerated.
There were traces at the scene.
Traces of what?
In Lowgate Cemetery, a plot number 139, blood. Lots of blood. That's where the man was buried on the court, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there. The depths of the conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering. I reviewed the police records from the time extensively. A thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigating team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved. Are you suggesting the prison warden abetted the man's bid for freedom? Yes, and I was suspected of doing it, of using that mass murder's execution as a way to help him to escape.
You did what?
I remember now. The horror of it all is coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the watchtower, he's spinning left and right. I'm sorry, Danny, this is a serious business, but I cannot help you, no. As chief warden, you were responsible for overseeing the execution of 4, eh? Well, it seems the fellas at Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words about you, Boot. You better pack your things, laddie. You're to attend in person. As soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I knew, The professor, the most hated killer in our country's history.
Who's talking who?
And I let him escape. I finished my life. It's over.
Yo! He passed out.
Order! Bailiff, fetch a doctor at once. Court is adjourned for today with immediate effect.
So it is to
So,
be continued.
with Mr. Vigil's collapse, proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Kazuma, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
To be continued.
Huh, I thought it was too short for this. Where the heck are we with this? Huh, so there is. Like, comment, subscribe, Chronicles, and I'm signing out.